So, my fiancé, who is 26 years old, and I, 27, were all set to tie the knot soon. We've been planning this for quite a while, and everything was finally falling into place. Invitations were sent, service providers were booked, and we even had our vows ready to go. All we were excited about was the big day. But as the day got closer, I started having more doubts about it. Whenever I was home, my fiancé became guarded and panicky, which made me suspicious. I tried talking to her about it, but she kept insisting that I was imagining things and blamed it on wedding jitters. I decided to go along with it and pretended everything was okay. Then one day, I noticed a manly scent in the air when I came home. It definitely wasn't mine, so I casually pointed it out to her. I wondered if she had someone over, or if she bought a new perfume that didn't suit her. She seemed taken aback by the suggestion, and acted like she didn't even notice the scent herself. She brushed it off, saying it was probably from someone with a strong scent she encountered while out in public. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. My instincts kept telling me to dig deeper into the whole situation. So, here's what I did. I secretly set up a little camera on our home bookshelf in the living room without letting her know. I acted totally normal, and even went to work as usual the next day. When I returned home, we chatted about our day, wedding stuff, and all the usual end-of-day talk. After making sure she had fallen asleep, I checked the camera footage. Turns out, I saw her making out with a close mutual friend in the living room and then going to the bedroom. I didn't dwell on the video, just got what I needed, saved it to a drive, and started figuring out how to confront her and make her face the consequences for breaking my trust. I pretended to be clueless the whole time leading up to our wedding day. It was too late to cancel everything, so I went ahead with the plans. On the big day, I told her I had a surprise in store since I'd be waiting at the end of the aisle before her. While she was getting ready, I managed to hand the DJ a pen drive containing the incriminating footage. Then I got into my position, wearing a smile on my face, partly because I knew she had no idea what was about to hit her. I posed for photos, greeted guests, and made sure I knew where our mutual friend was seated before it all went down. He didn't even seem guilty. Finally, my fiancé walked down the aisle, and the priest got to the part where he asks if anyone objects to the marriage. No one said anything, not even the mutual friend who was involved with my cheating fiancé. It looked like we were moving forward, so I decided to lighten the mood and said, "I do." The guests laughed too. Maybe they thought I was kidding, but I stuck with it. I called the friend over, and he looked totally shocked. That's when I think my fiancé realized what was happening, and she was silently pleading with me not to cause a scene. But I motioned to the DJ to play the footage and told her that she should be with our mutual friend, since they seemed to be meant for each other. I gave them my blessing and walked away. She started crying, saying she just got cold feet, and chaos broke out among the guests. Everyone was yelling accusations from all sides, and some people got really worked up. The priest was bewildered, my fiancé was in tears, and the mutual friend disappeared into the crowd. Needless to say, we returned the rings, and I told her we were done. She and her family are not happy with me, claiming there was a better way to handle the situation. But hey, emotions were running high, and it was the way it played out. I really let them have it about my fiancé's promiscuous daughter and demanded they pay me back for all the money I spent on the wedding. Otherwise, I threatened to post the video on my Facebook. My ex totally freaked out at that, so I'm hoping they'll cough up the cash soon. That's the messy situation I'm dealing with right now. Update. My ex's parents agreed to reimburse me when they looked all stressed. I think it's probably coming from their retirement savings. I feel bad for them, to be honest. I'm a 40-year-old guy, and back in November, I left my ex-wife Z, who is 37. In March, she convinced me that we should open our relationship after about 3 years of her shutting me out physically, sleeping on the couch, and claiming she might be asexual and not interested in sex anymore. She said we should do this for me, and mentioned she already talked to a mutual female acquaintance, A, about having a threesome, and A seemed interested. I was like, okay, but I had 3 conditions. We could each veto bad partner choices, we'd use protection, and we'd be honest about everything. About a month later, Z asked me to take the kids to my parents' place for a weekend, so she could have a friend from work over for drinks and a movie. I brought up our thing with A, and she acted like she didn't know what I was talking about, saying she barely knew A. At that time, she had me convinced that I needed antipsychotics, against my doctor's advice, and that I was schizophrenic, making me doubt my own memory and judgment. During that time, I messaged A on Facebook, and she confirmed that Z hadn't contacted her at all. So I confronted Z about it, and she denied ever discussing anything with A, claiming it wasn't my business. When I got back home after visiting my folks, the living room smelled like Zex, as if they had a wild session on the couch and didn't even bother covering it up. I checked my outdoor security cameras and accidentally overheard them having a smoke break. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't stop myself. I heard her saying how things would be different if I wasn't in the picture, and then they did stuff outside on the porch after midnight, right in view of our neighbor's windows. She even had the nerve to say, "I thought you were asexual now." When I questioned her about it, she replied, "I never said that. Maybe you need more meds." It was so hurtful. Over the next few months, I took the kids away every weekend and watched them too, 3 times a week so she could go on dates. Our date nights became even worse. She started having sex with me once a week around that time, but she still wouldn't sleep next to me. The whole situation was just heartbreaking and confusing. The following week, she went and found a date on FetLife who physically harmed her at her request, leaving her black and blue. It was so severe that she had to take a week off from work and didn't even leave the couch. I was absolutely devastated. Realizing our relationship was in trouble, I searched for a couples therapist named T. However, Z refused to see her just because T happened to be black. Before finding T, I made sure she was capable of helping me deal with my issues independently, and I started regular therapy with her when Z backed out. Over the next few months, I really tried to be okay with the open relationship, even though I couldn't find anyone interested in what I had to offer. Z suggested it was because I was too old, fat, and unattractive. In an attempt to understand her needs better and why I wasn't meeting them, I met and befriended her regular partners. But during this time, I discovered she wasn't using protection with any of them. There were about 6 or 7 other guys by then, from what I could tell. Ironically, the only people I engaged with in the open relationship were 2 of the guys Z was frequently hooking up with. She made me feel guilty for every step I took in the open relationship, so I started hiding these interactions from her. Back in August, I got into a 5-car pileup, lost my new car, and got a severe concussion. It left me with loads of debt, a $600 monthly car payment, and no car to show for it. I started working even harder to make up for the financial gap, only taking 1 day off each month to hang out with a friend who she was seeing at the time, and his girl, and we'd usually end up getting drunk at their place. During all this, I was also taking care of our 3-year-old and my 11-year-old stepdaughter whenever Z wanted to sleep away. It was tough, and the lockdown made me feel even more isolated and lonely. Then Z found out that I was having threesomes with her first open relationship boyfriend and his girlfriend when we got together a couple of nights a month for drinks. She exploded and accused me of being a deceiver, a cheater, and a liar. I didn't even know that was against the rules, since she hadn't told me all the details of her open relationship. So I stopped hanging out with them, hoping to make things right. She immediately dumped that boyfriend. After that, she brought home another guy, C. I didn't trust him and tried to veto him. I knew him from before, but Z said it was none of my business and that I had no say in the matter. C and I were buddies back in high school. One night, when we were both around 19 or 20, he showed up at my parents' house with a busted nose and a black eye. His dad had beaten him up badly, and he said he was leaving our hometown forever. I made a big decision that night and quit my job and broke up with my girlfriend. We both hitchhiked to a big city together, but after about 2 weeks, he left me high and dry with nowhere to go. He was done with the homeless life and just called his mom to buy him a bus ticket back home. I was stuck in the city, and it took me nearly a year to find my way off the streets. I had to do some sketchy stuff for some shady people just to survive and get food. I really regretted having to associate with such dangerous folks, and one night, I saw something that made me realize I had to leave town. Thankfully, I had managed to save some money by then, so I got out of there. I returned home, but C and I avoided each other for almost 2 decades. Out of the blue, Z and C fell in love, and she didn't hold back about bragging to me about his Johnson's size and cross-dressing skills. I tried to be chill with everything, and even rekindled my friendship with C, letting him into my inner circle. He got really close. During this time, I think someone was giving me hormone blockers without my knowledge, and it led to a gender crisis at 39, leaving me feeling lost. Then in October, C asked me to divorce Z so that she could have the baby they had been talking about. I confronted her about it, saying, "He asked me to leave you. He made it sound like that's what you want. I won't stick around if that's what you want. I'm asking you to choose me over him and stop seeing him." Her response was, "How dare you make me choose?" So I said, "Fine, I'll make the choice for you." About 30 days later, I got an apartment with a close friend and continued to stay in touch with my 3-year-old. C moved into the house right away. I paid $2,000 a month until Christmas to avoid causing financial strain on the people I care about. Now, I'm paying around $1,000 a month in support, and I see my 3-year-old twice during the week, and she spends Saturday nights with me. Z is using the family justice system to demand more time so she can have more free time to be a grown-up. I don't get how she feels entitled to anything more at this point. During Christmas, I had to stay away from my kids because I felt like I was going to die before the new year. I didn't want them to think my sadness had anything to do with them. Honestly, I'm feeling really undesirable, and the fact that I can't find any new friends or partners isn't helping at all. I've tried all the dating apps, and being bisexual, I've explored every single one of them, but it's just not working for me. It messes with my head that someone like her can be loved by many, while I can't even find one person to love me. It's really messing with my self-worth. If I'm not worthy of affection, love, and respect at 40, I'm starting to lose hope that I'll ever get it. What's the point of life at this age if I can't have that? Update. Just to be clear, for whoever else you're including in this email, I asked you about the daycares you checked out for our daughter, and you scowled at me and gave a vague answer like, "Ones with programs," without giving any real details. I wasn't being rude when I asked. I simply said, "That's not the answer to the question I asked. See you later." I have every right to know about what's happening in our daughter's life, and you need to communicate with me when I ask for details. I shouldn't have to figure everything out from what she tells me, especially since she's only 4. So, please stop twisting things after the fact and trying to make me look like the bad guy here, in case you've forgotten or convinced yourself that you weren't to blame for our marriage falling apart. Let me remind you of the events leading to our separation. You were the one who suggested opening our marriage, and we agreed on the rules. However, you decided I shouldn't have any say in who you slept with while we were still married, even though that was part of the agreement. But you punished me when I exercised the same freedom. You also broke the agreement by not using protection with others while insisting on using them with me. And when I asked you to stop fooling around, you ignored me. You chose not to keep your promises and consistently put your flings before our marriage. You made all the decisions here except for the one to leave. That was my call, and I did it because I couldn't take having my heart broken anymore. I pleaded with you to stop seeing him, but it seems you've forgotten that. I know you're angry, but I still don't understand why. I told you that he asked me to step aside, and I asked you to prioritize our marriage, but you chose not to, even when I said I would leave. You can't be mad now because you both got what you wanted. Unfortunately, I didn't. I'm alone most of the time, and I have to hear from others how the only person I ever loved and trusted is talking badly about me. It's not a pleasant situation to be in. I'm not the rude one here. I'm not the selfish one here. I won't tolerate these tantrums just because you don't get what you want when you want it. If you want to avoid this kind of reaction in the future, simply tell me what's going on with our child when I ask, and stop with the nonsense gaslighting and trying to change the narrative completely. Now, let me tell you my story. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I've been engaged to my fiancée, who's 34, for about 4 years. We've been together for over 10 years. We've had our ups and downs like most couples, but as far as I know, there was never anything shady going on. Around 6 months ago, I started feeling something was off when my significant other, S0, began a new job. I had been supportive during her education before this, and we were both excited about her starting a career with her new qualifications. But as she spent more time at this job, I noticed some new red flags. She made new friends at work, and the first signs were her staying out very late, like until 3 a.m., or even spending the night at her sister's place and not coming home until the next morning. I'm usually trusting, so I didn't investigate further and let it slide. Then, she went on a beach trip out of state, about 6 hours away, with her new work buddies, or so she said. Turns out, during this trip, she met a guy at a bar, and they ended up having sex. This bombshell hit me about 8 weeks ago when she returned from the trip. Just 1 day later, she told me she needed to take a break and rethink our engagement and relationship. It totally blindsided me because I thought everything was fine and had no clue anything was going on. At this point, I still didn't know about the cheating. I asked her to stay and offered to go to counseling, but she was insistent on leaving and said she'd be staying at her sister's place. She eventually came back and said she wanted to work on our relationship and agreed to do couples counseling. About 3 weeks ago, she dropped the bombshell that she's pregnant again. I trust her, so I assumed it's my baby since we've been trying for a while to start a family. I got all excited, started making baby plans, and even bought baby books and corner protectors. But then, those red flags from before started nagging at me, and my thoughts spiraled. I mustered up the courage to ask her for a paternity test to confirm if I'm the father. I told her I trust her, but it's just for my peace of mind and security. She got upset with my request, and we put it off for a while. However, I brought it up again last Friday while we were talking about the baby. That's when she broke down and admitted that she's been cheating on me. She was 100% sure that the other guy is the father. She also told me she had an appointment for termination the next day. I was completely shocked and heartbroken. I haven't freaked out yet, but I'm still trying to process everything. I told her I'd take her to the termination appointment since it was quite far away, and I didn't want her to get sick or anything on the way back. Later on, she confessed that she met this guy during her beach trip, and they had sex. Then, I assumed they met again when she stayed at her sister's place, but she denies having sex with him for a second time. I don't really know if there were more encounters. She might have left some details out. According to her, the guy told her he doesn't want anything to do with the baby and suggested she get a termination. It must have been tough for her to hear that, especially since she's been wanting a baby for a while. He even had the audacity to suggest that I raise the child. Can you believe that? I guess they talked about me. Who knows? Maybe if I wasn't bringing up paternity testing, I could have fallen into that trap. I had no choice but to leave our apartment and move back in with my parents. She's saying she loves me, but I'm devastated and can't see any way to fix things at this point. I'm just so heartbroken about the life we had together falling apart. Plus, I lost my buddy, her dog, in all of this mess. Though I'm at home with the dog now, dealing with the aftermath of a relationship crumbling is tough. I'm lost and looking for advice on what to do next or how to start healing because right now, I feel numb and lifeless. Thanks everyone for the support. Reading your comments is really helping me handle this situation, and I'm grateful for it. I've already moved out about 85% of my stuff. The rest is in storage, all bundled together, so I'll need to schedule some time with my ex-fiancée to go through it. Once that's done, I'll be completely moved out. I made sure to take everything valuable with me. Regarding the lease, it was canceled, but she hadn't fully moved out yet, so I had to help her get rid of the remaining items. It turned out not to be as much as I thought, and we cleared everything out in about 2 hours. After that, I said goodbye without any affection and left, and I haven't seen her since. The only other thing left was the car insurance, which I canceled and got a new policy. I texted her about it, giving her 10 days to find a new policy. I gave her plenty of time to sort it out, but I don't know what she did, and honestly, it's not my problem. I haven't spoken to her since I sent that text, and she hasn't tried to contact me in any way. I don't actually want her to reach out to me. In fact, I'm quite glad she hasn't tried to call or anything. I talked to the landlord, and they said they'll send me documentation about the early termination fee and how to pay it. When I went online to their renters portal, my account was deactivated, so I can't see anything there. The landlord mentioned they already have another renter lined up. I'm a bit puzzled about how this termination fee will work since they haven't sent me anything yet. I'm wondering if there's some COVID-related reason why they haven't charged me, or if there's some other clause I'm not aware of. But so far, I haven't paid any of the fee, so I'm just waiting for it to show up in my mailbox someday. I'm assuming they'll send it, but it would be a pleasant surprise if for some reason I didn't have to pay that $3,000. Besides that, I'm doing well. Surprisingly, I haven't gotten emotional or shed a single tear about her or our relationship ending. I feel free, you know? I've been keeping myself busy at the gym, with my side work, and enjoying my hobbies whenever I want. I even made plans for a rock climbing and hiking trip with one of my best friends whom I rarely get to see. It's so liberating to do things I want without having to check with someone else, worry about money, or coordinate schedules. I can just do whatever I want now, and it's amazing. One of the comments on this post said that I haven't been upset because my future self knows my life will be fantastic one day. I believe in that more and more each day. It feels like I was held back before, but now I'm free and ready to experience everything life has to offer. I'm happy to hear you're doing well too. I hope you've put the past behind you and moved on with your life. Your ex-fiancé probably only stayed with you because you provided stability. I don't think her affair partner was the only guy she cheated on you with either. The only reason you found out about him was because she got pregnant and you asked for a paternity test. It's heartbreaking to realize someone who claims to love you can hurt you that much. She was willing to let you take care of the child knowing it wasn't yours. Thank goodness you asked for the test. I'm glad you were able to leave that relationship with her. You deserve way better than her. My wife and I first met in 2008 while we were both traveling. It was one of those classic movie-like moments in Madrid. Our eyes locked from across the bar, and I mustered the courage to approach her. That night, we ended up going home together. The following 3 days were filled with passion, fun, and lots of sun. We decided to stay in touch. After that, she went back home, and I continued my travels. We started a year-long long-distance relationship before I eventually moved to be with her. During that time, she confessed that she had cheated on a previous boyfriend and felt remorseful about it. However, she also believed that her ex's decision to break up with her was excessive, considering it was only a kiss. Looking back, I realized she might have been testing my reaction, and possibly even cheating on me too. While I can forgive and move on from that, since it was in the distant past and related to long-distance struggles, what happened last week is a different story. I made it clear that cheating was a deal-breaker for me, and I warned her that if I caught her even flirting with another man, I would end the relationship. To me, violence and cheating are the two absolute no-nos in a relationship. A year after I moved, we tied the knot, and a year later, she became pregnant. I was thrilled. However, she appeared distant, sad, and anxious during the first 2 months after finding out about the pregnancy. After some prodding, she finally broke down and confessed that she had a one-night stand around the time of conception, and there's a chance the baby might not be mine. Devastated, I hopped on a plane back home and cut off communication with her for a month. I didn't respond to her messages or calls. Eventually, though, I gave in and we talked. She said she'd get an in utero paternity test, and if the baby wasn't mine, she'd terminate the pregnancy. But she wanted me to come back before she did anything. I decided to return, and she underwent the test with me in the room. The results came back, confirming the baby wasn't mine. I told her she needed to schedule the appointment for the termination that day, or else I'd go see a divorce lawyer as soon as I left the hospital. Reluctantly, she booked the appointment for a week later. On the day of the appointment, I drove her and held her hand. I understood that a termination, no matter the circumstances, could be traumatic for her. In the car, she broke down in tears, begging me to reconsider, make it work, or anything but go through with the termination. But I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Do whatever you want with your body and your life, but I won't raise a child that isn't mine. That kid would constantly remind me of your betrayal, and I can't put myself through that. So it's either termination or divorce." Just to clarify, I wanted a divorce right away. When she hesitated, I immediately leaned towards divorce. I never tried to convince her otherwise. I did advise against termination, but she wanted to keep the baby and save the marriage. She made it clear that she'd terminate if I left, even if the baby was mine, and that she wanted specifically to keep the child and have me raise it with her. But that wasn't happening. She asked if I'd give her another chance if she had the baby, and I said yes because I still loved her. But honestly, I wasn't willing to play the role of a father to a child born out of her infidelity. In the end, she chose the termination. She had complications, and bed rest was needed for a month. But things changed after that. She became distant, unaffectionate, and cold. The spark between us was lost. I tried my best to salvage the relationship, but she didn't seem interested. One night, after a few drinks, she confessed that she resented me for making her choose about the termination. In the heat of the moment, I lashed out, telling her she deserved to suffer for what she did. I regretted those words instantly, even though they expressed how hurt I truly felt. One day, when I came home early from work, I found her crying on the couch with a man I knew well, a co-worker of hers. The look on their faces said it all. He was the father, and their affair had been going on for 3 months. I'll never know if that's the whole truth, but I've stopped asking because it's too painful. I initiated divorce proceedings and kicked her out of the house right away. She pleaded and cried for months, and foolishly, I gave in and took her back. I made it clear that she had to quit her job and cut contact with the other guy. She agreed and made the call immediately. We decided to move away from her city and bought a house in my hometown, on the other side of the country. We went to marriage counseling, and it helped us improve. It was a slow process, but we got stronger together. We both decided to be completely open about everything, and we accepted that as our new norm. As time passed, I stopped snooping on her phone. Our relationship was great, our intimacy was satisfying, and we loved traveling together. We even started talking about having kids. We tried to conceive for 2 years, but no luck yet, though we had a lot of fun trying. This went on for years, and I felt completely secure and open with her when the recent incident occurred. She had been a bit distant for a few months, but I wasn't overly concerned. Whenever I asked her about it, she'd reassure me and be affectionate, but when left alone, she became quiet and sought her own space. One night, she was out drinking with friends, and I was at home. I woke up at 4 a.m. and heard her talking downstairs. When I went out to ask if it was her, she didn't respond. I had a feeling she was on the phone, and considering the late hour, her recent distance, and her questionable loyalty in the past, I decided to eavesdrop. She was giggling and flirting, saying stuff like, "I miss you too," and "I love you too." I knew it was him. I was sure of it. Then she started talking about the hotel, how great the room service was, and when she could see him again, and I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed down the stairs like a raging bull, and she knew she was busted. She started yelling, screaming, and cursing at me, trying to cover up her tracks. She said she had been to a doctor, and during the termination, they discovered some kind of problem. She was drunk, slurring her words and crying. But amidst all the chaos, she admitted that her uterus had been damaged, making it unlikely for her to ever carry a baby to term. She had found this out 3 months earlier, right around the time she started pulling away from me. I snatched the phone from her hand, and she tried to get it back. We wrestled back and forth until I pushed her onto the couch and told her not to move until I said so. I sat on a chair opposite her and went through all the details. There were 6 text messages from him, asking when she'd leave the bar and saying how much he missed her voice and how much fun they had together. Obviously, all the other messages had been deleted, but she hadn't gotten a chance to erase the ones from that night yet. I read the messages out loud, and she glared at me with anger in her eyes. I kept asking her to explain herself, and eventually, she jumped up and started screaming again. She yelled that she took a day off work and drove to meet him halfway, spending the whole day with him in a hotel. She said that when she got the news from the doctor, she saw me as an enemy, and he was her ally. She screamed that she wasn't sorry and that I had ruined her life. I yelled back that I was glad she got the termination, and if I could, I would also make him disappear from her life. She slapped me across the face, so I slapped her back, equally tough. It was open-handed, but I hit her much harder than she hit me. She fell back onto the couch, stunned and in disbelief, holding her face and starting to sob. She reached for her phone and I grabbed it from her, then threw it, smashing it against the wall. I went up to my room and paced back and forth, while she stayed downstairs crying, and that's how we spent the night until morning. When I went downstairs, she was asleep. I woke her up and told her to take a shower and leave. I had already scheduled an appointment with my lawyer to file for divorce, and she couldn't stay in the house while I was gone. She cried and pleaded with me not to go through with it. She claimed she was drunk and didn't mean what she said. She admitted that she made up the story about meeting him just to hurt me, and that I was the only one for her, and so on. She apologized for hitting me and said she didn't need an apology for me slapping her back because she deserved it. I agreed that she deserved it and told her it was good she wasn't waiting for an apology because she wouldn't be getting one. That was last week. This week, she's back living with her parents. She calls me 10 times a day and sends long, weepy text messages that I don't read or reply to, as my lawyer advised me not to contact her unless through him. I'm proceeding with the divorce. Update. An important note I forgot to mention earlier, and I've answered it in various comments now. She told me she didn't want to raise the baby alone. If I divorced her, she would go ahead with it. She didn't want to keep the baby, and I convinced her to get rid of it. However, she wanted both of us to keep it and raise the child of the man she cheated with. At that point, I still believed the pregnancy was the result of a one-night stand she had during a weekend away with her friends. But she wasn't really away with her friends.